Get stealing, woo, wheeling, dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun. Yeah! Kurt Angle, yeah! Why, Triple H, you son of a tell me why! And Tony Khan, this is also on you!
I am going to ruin wrestling.
Just get over it!
What is up? What is up? What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is yours truly, Flamin' Ricky DeRays, right here on episode 9 of the WrestleHavoc Podcast. It is Sunday, June 22nd, 2025. We're already near the end of the month of June. Yeah, the month of June already has passed by super quickly. It's not even funny. We're already halfway through 2025. We were literally in the middle of the decade. All of a sudden, the month of June feels like it just started. It literally feels like it just started, but it's literally the 22nd of June. And we're nearing the 4th of July. Of course, we got a lot of things to talk about right here on this edition of the WrestleHavoc Podcast. Of course, there were crazy real-life events that happened last night, which we will briefly get into, because it also has, you know, something to do with clearly WWE and Saudi Arabia. Of course, if you guys don't know, the United States attacked Iran, and we're going to be talking about how it affects WWE and all the talent going to Saudi Arabia this weekend for the Night of Champions PLE. Speaking of Night of Champions, of course, we are going to be discussing Night of Champions. We're going to be doing a quick card rundown for Night of Champions. AEW. Yes, AEW was in the news this week, as not only they had their Grand Slam Mexico show, but also they were sued. AEW and Jon Moxley were sued. So we're going to be talking about that as well. SmackDown is set to move to 2 hours. And of course, we're going to be talking about Steve Austin, Athena, Grand Slam Mexico. Also, a quick card rundown for AEW All In 2025. Goldberg, yes, Goldberg made his return as expected to World Wrestling Entertainment, and he challenged Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. He just came in and was like, I challenge you for the World Heavyweight title because you're next at Saturday night's main event. We're going to be talking about that, all this and much more right here on episode 9 of the WrestleHavoc Podcast. Before we get into all this craziness, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the friggin' referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. I'm sorry, guys. It is literally boiling hot outside. If you guys don't see me right now, I'm sweating bullets. It's literally it's like 88 degrees outside, and tomorrow it's going to be even worse. It's going to be 101 degrees outside. Yeah, 101 degrees outside, and I don't know, man. I don't know how I will survive this, but I'm sweating bullets at the moment. I literally try to put on the AC, but unfortunately, I was like, I don't want to be late for this show, so I'm just going to go straight ahead and just do the show. But I got a nice coffee with me, so we're not going to be complaining because we got a nice iced coffee. We got water with us. We good. We're prepared, okay? But also, of course, tomorrow's going to be like 101 degrees, and dude, I'm telling you right now, man, I'm going to suffer tomorrow. I'm going to suffer tomorrow because, like, literally 2 weeks ago, it was like 60-something degrees, like 2 weeks ago. All of a sudden, summer came by, and summer came in with a bang. And they were like, you're not going to be dealing with that 60-degree weather anymore, man. We're gonna shoot it straight up to 88 to 90 degrees. But yeah, man, I'm sweating bullets right now, but that ain't going to stop me. That ain't going to stop me. By putting on this beautiful show for you guys. Of course, if you guys are watching, not only on the WrestleHavoc channel, I thank you guys, but also if you guys are watching this show on the WNN Facebook page, the WNN YouTube channel, or on the WNN app, I thank you guys so much for watching this show, because we are going to be talking a lot of pro wrestling tonight on this edition of the WrestleHavoc Podcast. Also, quick note, if you guys are curious or if you guys are interested, please check out the WrestleHavoc Clips YouTube channel on YouTube, where I upload clips from this very podcast. If you guys want to check out clips from this very podcast, of course, go to the WrestleHavoc Clips channel. The link will be in the description below. But without any further ado, let's get straight into the news. And of course, we're going to start off with WWE and its status when it comes to Night of Champions. Because if you guys do not know, Night of Champions is going to be taking place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. If you guys don't know, I mean, you guys should know. WWE has an annual show every year in Saudi Arabia. They usually go to Saudi Arabia twice a year. You know, sometimes they would go during the spring, and then the second time during that same year, they'd go in the fall. So WWE is going to make their trip to Saudi Arabia this coming weekend for the Crown Jewel show. And it sparked a lot of conversation. And the reason why that conversation was spearheaded was because of the fact of there were real world events that took place. Of course, if you guys don't know, the United States has essentially bombed 3 nuclear sites in Iran. And it's essentially like just a war zone over there in the Middle East. And Saudi Arabia, even though it's another country, it's still in the Middle East. And it's, I believe, like right above or below Iran. Correct me if I'm wrong. But like they're like, from what it looks like, they look like they're like right next to each other. But it sparked a lot of conversation as to whether or not the talent or WWE themselves are even going to be holding the Night of Champions show in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I'm reading this report from Fightful Select. WWE Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia has a lot of question marks after the United States bombed Iran. Iran vowed what it calls, quote-unquote, everlasting consequences to the U.S. airstrikes on 3 of its nuclear sites. This has naturally caused concern amongst wrestling fans considering the contentious nature of the situation. And previous trips to Saudi Arabia are not going as smoothly as everyone would have hoped. Fightful has reached out to WWE reps in an official capacity and haven't heard back. However, one higher up on background said that the situation was being monitored accordingly. The WWE talent that are currently set to travel out midweek via charter plane that would take them to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. If this was just the Night of Champions show, it would have been a very small flight. Only 10 wrestlers are slated to compete on the show as of right now. However, WWE has a 3-hour SmackDown planned for the city as well. At least in Saudi Arabia, all those around the event are preparing as if the event is happening. One source working on the event called it, quote-unquote, full steam ahead as of Sunday afternoon locally. That one source, speaking on the matter of opinion, didn't believe it would be postponed or canceled and thought there was too much money at stake with the upcoming Royal Rumble being there. Of course, there's too much money at stake because that's all WWE/TKO care about. They all care about the money. They all care about the money. Why would they not? I mean, it's a business, right? It's a business. If you're running a business, your number one priority should be money. But at the same time, you also need to take into consideration the safety of your talent. Moving on, beyond that, the source said that, quote-unquote, Saudi is one of the safest places in the world as it relates to the situation. And another source believed that WWE would be made assurances of said safety. The site of the event is on full build mode as of right now, and fan events in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia are planned to be announced for this coming week. Fightful will update us when they gain more information. Now, this, of course, you guys all know the news. Of course, the United States bombed Iran. They bombed like 3 nuclear sites over there because of fear of a nuclear weapon, and I believe they did have a nuclear weapon over there. But when it comes to, this is not going to be a political talk. Right here, we're here to strictly talk about professional wrestling. We're here to talk about professional. We're not going to sit here and talk about politics because my political opinion should not matter to you. I don't care about your political beliefs. You believe what you want. Okay, you believe what you want to believe. But I will say this: if the U.S. bombed Iran and WWE is slated to go to the Middle East this coming weekend for a PLE, of course, it is going to spark some concern amongst the talent. It's bound to happen. It's gonna spark some concern within the talent because, of course, if you're a wrestler that's going to go to Saudi Arabia and you're going to be wrestling on that show, you bet your ass that WWE is clearly, monitoring the situation. But at the same time, of course, you're afraid of what could happen to you because, of course, it is the Middle East. Yeah, it's Saudi Arabia. It's not Iran, but still, it's in the Middle East. And in the Middle East, there's a lot of stuff going on, especially right now in the Middle East with Israel, all that stuff. But this is not going to be about political talk. This is just going to be me talking about the safety of the wrestlers. In my opinion, what do I think WWE should do? In my opinion, I genuinely believe this. WWE should honestly move Night of Champions to a location at least somewhere here. I know a lot of people were pointing Chicago. A lot of people were pointing other different cities here in the U.S. But if you are a realist like I am, is WWE going to do that? The answer is very simple. The answer is no. They are not going to move Night of Champions away from Saudi Arabia to be held here in a city here in the U.S. Why is that? Well, it sparks one word, and that one word is money. It's all about the green. It's all about the money. Saudi Arabia has a deal set with WWE/TKO. They're essentially business partners in a sense that Saudi Arabia will pay WWE millions and millions and millions of dollars guaranteed for WWE to host, I believe, 2 shows per year in Saudi Arabia. And I hate to be the guy that says this, but WWE is just not going to give up that money. They're not. Especially under new leadership with TKO involved. TKO, they're essentially master capitalists. Like they care about the money, and that is it. They only care about the bottom line. They only care about the bottom line, and that is it. WWE, even though on one hand I do feel like they are caring about the safety of the talent, and I would assume that they're gonna, look out for the talent. They're not gonna cancel Night of Champions or move Night of Champions, unfortunately. Would I have loved for that to happen? Yes, of course, because I care about the talent. I care about the safety of the talent, but WWE clearly, they are not going to do that. Not only that, in this Fightful report, and Fightful is a very reputable source, they stated this, and I quote, "At least in Saudi Arabia, those around the event are preparing as if the event is happening." So they're already setting up the event. They are literally already setting up the event as if nothing is going on. And of course, once again, I'm reading this from Fightful. One source working on the event called it, quote unquote, full steam ahead. Even though that there are real world events going on, it's not going to stop WWE from going to Saudi Arabia, unfortunately. And it sucks. It sucks. Because again, I care about the safety of the talent, but knowing WWE, knowing TKO, they don't care. There were many similar instances twice that actually, no, one time, but the second time was a very different instance. But if you guys don't remember, back in, I believe it was 2018, 2018, I believe, was the first year that WWE was starting to do shows in Saudi Arabia. And this was when WWE and those Saudi Arabia shows were essentially glorified house shows. And they were really bad shows, by the way. But the first few events that WWE held in Saudi Arabia, especially the first event, I believe it was the Greatest Royal Rumble, it was essentially propaganda for the Saudi Arabian government. Not only that, the second time that they went to Saudi Arabia, which was that same year in the fall of 2018, they were hosting that Crown Jewel show. And I believe the situation was I believe a journalist got killed and sparked a lot of concern amongst a lot of people to the point where WWE was monitoring the situation as if WWE should go to Saudi Arabia or not. They ended up going to Saudi Arabia anyway, and essentially nothing happened. But the second, another instance of WWE just not caring about, essentially safety. If you guys don't remember, back in 2019, when the WWE roster was going to Saudi Arabia, they actually ended up getting stranded in Saudi Arabia when they were about to leave. But it was not over a political issue. It was actually over financial issues because apparently Vince McMahon wanted, he wanted the money that he was owed, but the talent was still stranded in Saudi. It was a crazy mess. It was a crazy mess. It's scary when you go to a place like Saudi Arabia. It is. It's very scary, especially if you are a talent. But in a perfect world, would I want WWE to postpone this show? Or not postpone the show, but move the show to a different location? Yeah, I would. And in fact, if I'm WWE, I'd do that. Especially with all the events that are going on. I mean, it's not a political, it is a political thing with all the events going on. Of course it is. But in terms of WWE themselves, I feel like their only concern, in my opinion, should be the safety of its performers. That's it. The safety of its performers. And unfortunately, WWE is not going to do that. They're going to have the show take place in Saudi Arabia because they're owed X amount of dollars. They're not going to leave that money on the table, unfortunately. They're just not. Now, the talent, of course, from what it looks like when it comes to this report, the talent is going to be fine when they head to Saudi Arabia, but still, they have every right to spark that concern within them because they're going to Saudi Arabia. But that's just my opinion on the whole matter. It's a very scary situation. If I'm a talent, I'd be very concerned, especially if I go to Saudi Arabia, even though I know nothing is going to happen. Still, it's a very scary situation, especially knowing all of the world events that have been recently happening. If you guys have been watching the news, you know what's going on. It's very scary stuff. Very scary stuff. But from what it looks like, WWE is going to still have the show take place at Saudi Arabia, and they're just going to continue on like nothing is happening, unfortunately. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Night of Champions and the status of the show taking place in Saudi Arabia. Moving on. Night of Champions. We're going to kick off with running down the card so far for Night of Champions. Of course, Night of Champions is going to be taking place this weekend in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And, of course, we have the finals of the King and Queen of the Ring tournament. Of course, Randy Orton is advancing to the finals. He beat Sami Zayn this past Friday on SmackDown. And he's going to face either Jey Uso or Cody Rhodes. We have the Queen of the Ring finals, in which Asuka has advanced to the finals after winning her match this past Monday on Raw. And she's going to face either Roxanne Perez or Jade Cargill. We have the Intercontinental Championship match, as Dominic Mysterio will be defending his Intercontinental Championship against AJ Styles, which is actually a pretty good position for AJ Styles. It's great to see him in a title mix. We have the U.S. title match, as Jacob Fatu will be wrestling Solo Sikoa. We're actually going to be getting that match at Night of Champions, which I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not really that excited about it. I mean, to be fair, the whole Bloodline storyline, ever since Solo Sikoa took over the Bloodline last year, it hasn't really sparked my interest. And if anything, I look back at it and it was kind of a failed experiment. But if there's anything that came out that was good from that failed experiment, it was Jacob Fatu. I think Jacob Fatu being involved in the group made him an even bigger star. Not only that, I feel like Solo Sikoa, and I said this many times, Jacob Fatu's spot, think about this. Jacob Fatu's spot, where he is now, is exactly the same spot that Solo Sikoa should have been before. But, of course, Solo Sikoa has been getting a lot of criticism when it comes to his promos and all that. But it is what it is. We're going to be getting a U.S. title match between Jacob Fatu and Solo Sikoa. And in the main event, we have John Cena. Yes, the last real world's champion, who is still on his heel run. Not only that, he's on his retirement tour. Will be facing off against the Second City Saint, CM Punk, for the undisputed WWE Championship. This match I'm very excited about. Now, I will say this. I wish this match took place at SummerSlam. I'm being serious. I wish this match took place at SummerSlam. Not only because I'm planning on going to SummerSlam, because it's literally in my home state of New Jersey, which, New Jersey, rep it. But, I mean, it's John Cena versus CM Punk. I mean, these guys, like, honestly, CM Punk is one of John Cena's biggest rivals. And the fact that it's not happening at SummerSlam and instead of Night of Champions, to me, is kind of a crime, in a sense that they could have easily dragged this whole storyline all the way to SummerSlam. Now, who knows? They may still do that. But I feel like, in a sense, that they've kind of rushed John Cena versus CM Punk for a show like Night of Champions, in my opinion. And from what it looks like, if Cody Rhodes wins, we clearly know what champion Cody Rhodes is going to face. If Cody Rhodes wins the King of the Ring tournament, he's going to face John Cena, and that is going to be your main event at SummerSlam. Who knows? If Randy Orton eventually, wins, we could see a scenario in which maybe Cody or Randy Orton, I don't know. I don't even know, but actually, no, take that back. Randy Orton, I don't think he's going to win at all, but it's either down to Jey Uso or Cody Rhodes. If Jey Uso ends up advancing to the finals and he ends up winning the King of the Ring tournament, he's probably going to go after Gunther's world title. But we're going to have to wait and see what happens. It all depends. I mean, there's so many different scenarios that could easily happen when not only it comes to the King of the Ring tournament, but when it also comes to the world title scene. Because, think about this. if Jey Uso won the finals of the King of the Ring tournament, he's either going to face Gunther once again for the world title if he beats Goldberg at Saturday night's main event, or who knows, maybe Gunther could get cashed in by Seth Rollins, and then we could get Jey Uso versus Seth Rollins for the world title. It's a very weird dynamic. But if Cody Rhodes wins the King of the Ring, we're probably going to get a scenario in which Cody Rhodes faces off against John Cena in the rematch from WrestleMania. Because, again, why would Cody Rhodes go after the world title when he could easily go after John Cena, which John Cena is the guy that took the title from him at WrestleMania. You know what I'm saying? But, again, it all depends on the finals of the King of the Ring tournament. But I feel like they rushed the John Cena versus CM Punk match because, again, I really wish this match could have happened at SummerSlam. It's just tailor-made for SummerSlam, and that was even in the rumor mill that this match was probably going to be happening at SummerSlam. But I will say, number one, even though John Cena's heel run, and I was one of the people that were, I don't want to say in denial, but one of those people that was trying to give the John Cena heel run a chance. I've come to the realization, and I've stated this before on this very show, I've come to the realization that the John Cena heel run has been deemed a failure. I think we can all agree with that. The John Cena heel run has been a failure. But when it comes to the feud with John Cena and CM Punk, ever since CM Punk came into the picture, it actually made John Cena's heel run even more interesting than, I don't want to say it already is because it was never really interesting to begin with, but it made it more intriguing. And John Cena's heel run, again, has been deemed a failure, but at the same time, CM Punk being involved makes John Cena's current heel work much better than it was before. So why do I say that? Why do I say that CM Punk being involved it made John Cena's heel work better? Well, if you guys don't know, if you guys did not watch SmackDown this past Friday, John Cena cut a promo that we all would like to call, and CM Punk definitely knows, we would call this promo a pipe bomb because John Cena dropped a nuke on CM Punk. He cut the same pipe bomb promo that CM Punk cut on John Cena back in 2011. And let me tell you, it was glorious and easily the best promo that John Cena cut ever since he turned heel. Now, I'm going to read this almost word for word. Punk, as you lay there in your most uncomfortable, somebody's afraid of what I'm going to say, I hope you can listen. I hope you can digest, because before I leave here in 6 months with that WWE Championship, I got to get a whole lot of stuff out of my chest. First things first, I don't hate you. I just like you. I like you. I like you more than you've ever shared a locker room with, than anyone you've shared a locker room with, that's for sure. I hate this idea that you're the best in the world, because you're not. Because I'm the greatest of all time. You're better than me at one thing. And he said this, and I quote, "You are the best BSer in the world." But he actually said the word. Hey, I'm breaking the fourth wall, and he ends up waving at the camera. Ha ha. The truth is, Punk, I'm jealous of you. I am jealous that you have conned these people in believing the myth that you are the best in the world. Hey, Stu, shoot this. And think about this. So he goes towards the cameraman, and he says, "Hey, Claudio Castagnoli. Hey, Nick Nemeth. Hey, Matt Cardona. How you guys doing?" Of course, very similar. Because when CM Punk did his original pipe bomb back in 2011, he turns to the camera and he's like, "Hey, Colt Cabana, how you doing? You know, maybe I'll go defend my title in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Maybe I'll go back to Ring of Honor." John Cena essentially did the same thing. He said Claudio Castagnoli, Nick Nemeth, and Matt Cardona. If you guys don't know those names, of course, Claudio Castagnoli was the former Cesaro in WWE. And he currently wrestles in AEW and is a part of the Death Riders. Nick Nemeth was the former Dolph Ziggler, and he currently wrestles in TNA. And Matt Cardona, the former Zack Ryder in WWE, is currently wrestling on the independent scene, and I believe he does some appearances for TNA. But the more interesting part about this whole promo is that when he said those names, when he said Claudio Castagnoli, when he said Nick Nemeth, when he said Matt Cardona, the crowd, and I'm telling you this right now, the crowd went absolutely ballistic. They were like, oh my God, he actually said those names. Now, why is that? Why do I view that as a big deal? Because a lot of people always talks about the casual audience. Everybody's like, oh, AEW, WWE, they need to cater more towards the casual audience. And WWE 100% caters to the casual audience. AEW doesn't really. They like their little niche. But what's interesting was that when John Cena stated Claudio Castagnoli, Nick Nemeth, and Matt Cardona, the crowd in Grand Rapids, Michigan, that was where SmackDown was located. Grand Rapids, Michigan. The entire crowd knew who these guys were. So in my opinion, it kind of debunks the idea of the casual audience. Because in my opinion, even though the casual audience is important and you do need to cater to the casual audience, the casual fan will come and go. You know, it's all about the loyalty of your fan base. And the hardcore fan is also important. But also the casual fan is important. I'm not disputing that. But I'm just saying the idea of the casual fan being the end-all be-all is kind of debunked, especially when he said those three names, because everybody knows who these guys are. But also, it really depends on the market that you're in as well. If it was on a random city like that nobody really cares about, I'd probably beg to differ, but it is what it is. Continuing on with the promo. And this was one of my favorite lines of this whole John Cena pipe bomb. He stated this, and I quote, "Your promo, potato salad, pal. Hey, you're no longer the voice of the voiceless. You're a frickin' millionaire. Despite yourself, you're not Punk. You're a capitalist. And you're not against TKO, dude. You are Mr. TKO because they knocked your balls technically off your body." Those were the exact words that John Cena said to CM Punk this past Friday. You are a capitalist. You are a millionaire. You're not against TKO, even though CM Punk said, I'm not for TKO. John Cena was like, no, you're Mr. TKO. And you know what's crazier? You want to know what's the crazier thing? Everything that John Cena said was actually true. I actually tend to believe the words that comes out of the mouth of John Cena. And I'm a big CM Punk fan. I'm a big CM Punk fan. But let's be real with ourselves. The guy, in a sense, is kind of a hypocrite. And it's okay. We're all hypocrites at some point. Remember that scene in The Sopranos where Meadow meets up with Tony late at night? And Meadow's like, you know, sometimes we're all hypocrites. One of my favorite scenes in The Sopranos. That's essentially CM Punk. CM Punk is a hypocrite, but we're all hypocrites at the same time. You know, CM Punk went to AEW and he ended up falling out with them. Now, who's to blame? I mean, dude, it really all depends on who you believe or what you think. I mean, I have very strong opinions on the whole CM Punk AEW saga, but that's another story for another time. You know, I think everybody was at fault in that situation, not just Punk, everybody involved. You know, I don't take one side, but at the same time, Punk coming back to WWE, let's be real with ourselves, it was realistically his last option. And some people say on social media, oh, well, CM Punk, you know, how come he's not stirring up anything in WWE and he stirred up a lot of stuff in AEW? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because WWE is clearly watching every move that CM Punk does. They're literally monitoring every move that CM Punk makes. Also, WWE is a way more professional organization. Let's just be real. Continuing on with the John Cena quotes, he stated this, and I quote, "Your tweets are strong, but your actions are weak." Phenomenal work by John Cena, man. Honestly, man, this was fantastic work by John Cena. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Again, this was by far the best promo that John Cena cut ever since turning heel. The best. I don't care what anybody says. The best promo that John Cena literally cut ever since he turned heel. Because when he turned heel, and his first promo was your typical heel shtick. It was essentially your typical heel shtick. Oh, you know, I'm a part of this toxic relationship with you fans. You fans made me this way. It is your typical heel shtick, but you really need to add some sort of, you know, spice into what you're talking about, and we haven't really gotten that with John Cena as a heel. And think about this. John Cena is eventually going to turn back into a babyface. He's going to turn back into a babyface. Like, this heel run, look, I guarantee you, whatever the main event is going to be for SummerSlam, John Cena, I would assume we're probably going to get Cody Rhodes versus Cody Rhodes versus John Cena in the rematch if Cody Rhodes wins the King of the Ring. And if that match happens, Cody Rhodes is 100% going to win the world title, and John Cena is going to turn back into a babyface. It just makes total sense. Because he's not going to go out as a heel on his last match in December. It's just not going to happen. But I will say this. The promo, the pipe bomb that John Cena cut was phenomenal work. Phenomenal work on John Cena's end. And it makes the match between CM Punk and John Cena way more interesting. Now, if WWE, which most likely they will be headed to Saudi Arabia, CM Punk is headed to Saudi Arabia. I mean, the story as to why the match between both men is happening in Saudi Arabia actually makes sense. It actually makes sense. And I understand why WWE booked this match in Saudi Arabia. It's because John Cena, the character, the heel character, wants to but make CM Punk look like a hypocrite. And what better way to do that by essentially dragging CM Punk into the one place that he swore he was never going to wrestle at, which was Saudi Arabia. And of course, accusing a lot of the talent that wrestle in Saudi Arabia as just taking blood money from Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's the perfect story to tell. And one thing I'm very curious is that I will say this. One thing that I'm very curious as to what's probably going to happen is essentially, which I do believe they will be going to Saudi Arabia. I think it's bound to happen. I mean, WWE is just not going to move. They're not going to walk away from that money, unfortunately. The crowds in Saudi Arabia, so like throughout the past couple of years, I'm not going to lie, have been phenomenal. Like the crowds in Saudi Arabia throughout the past couple of years have been really good. I'm very curious to see the reaction that Saudi Arabia will give to CM Punk. I'm very curious. Like, how will the people in Saudi Arabia react to CM Punk? Is CM Punk going to enter in hostile, territory? Who knows? We're going to have to wait and see. But again, this pipe bomb promo, if you were not sold on the John Cena versus CM Punk match at Night of Champions, clearly this pipe bomb promo that John Cena cut this past Friday on SmackDown 100% sold you on essentially, their match at Night of Champions. Moving on. Goldberg. Yes, Goldberg makes his return to World Wrestling Entertainment. Of course, Gunther beat Jey Uso for the World Heavyweight Championship 2 weeks ago on Raw. And everybody was wondering why Jey Uso dropped the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, I talked about this last week on the show, and I stated this, and I quote, Jey Uso, his title run has been deemed an absolute failure, because it was. The reason why they put the belt on Jey Uso to begin with was because of the fact that they wanted to capture the moment of Jey Uso finally winning the big win at WrestleMania. That was the only reason as to why WWE put the strap on Jey Uso at WrestleMania. They just wanted to capture that moment. And the problem with that was that WWE did not have a good follow-up for Jey Uso. There were only 3 challengers that Jey Uso faced for the world title: Seth Rollins, Logan Paul, and Gunther. And 2 of those matches ended in controversy. The first ending in a DQ finish. The second one ending with interference with John Cena, but he still won the match. And the third one, he eventually lost the world title to Gunther. Jey Uso's title run has been deemed a failure. Everybody was curious as to why Gunther won the world title. But at the same time, everybody knew why Gunther won the title. And it was for one person and one person only. And that was, as Bret Hart would state, Bill Goldberg. Bill Goldberg made his return to WWE this past Monday on Raw. Of course, Gunther cut his promo, and then he was interrupted by Goldberg, and the crowd actually popped for Goldberg. And, of course, he congratulated Gunther for his success, and he told him how proud he was, blah, blah, blah. And then he brought up the fact that, of course, he started something with his family all the way back in October of the previous year at Bad Blood, because at the same time, Bad Blood was in Atlanta. And he ruffled up some feathers with the family of Goldberg, and he challenged him to a match. He challenged him to a match at Saturday night's main event on July 12th. If you guys don't know, July 12th is the same day that AEW will host their biggest show of the year, all in Texas. Of course, this was the site that we saw this past Monday on Raw with Goldberg challenging Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. WWE clearly needed a big match to combat AEW with their big show. that being Saturday night's main event. So they dragged Goldberg in and they were like, you know what? Let's have Goldberg's last match. Damn, let's just bring him in and have his last match for the World Heavyweight Championship. I will say this. Even though I don't like the idea of Goldberg facing Gunther for the world title, I'm not shocked about it. I'm not shocked because I already knew that this was going to be the case. From the moment Gunther won the world title, you already should have known that Gunther was eventually going to face Goldberg for the world title. Even though, if you really think about it, the way WWE went about it this past Monday, it really made no sense. Because Goldberg is essentially a part-timer, and he just came in out of nowhere, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to challenge you for the world title. Like, he was essentially handed a world title shot, blah. Here's the world title shot. You got it. There's no explanation whatsoever as to why he got that title shot. He was just given the world title shot. He just challenged him to a match, and WWE made it official. Hey, it's going to be Goldberg versus Gunther at Saturday night's main event on July 12th in Atlanta on NBC. That's essentially what was going on. That's exactly what happened. Now, I will say, I'm going to be honest. The match is going to be short. The match is essentially going to be short. Like every Goldberg match is a short match. But I'm not going to lie, man. You know, having Goldberg face Gunther to me is kind of a downgrade on Gunther's end. Because, like, we already know who's going to win. And I would assume Gunther is going to get the win. I think it'd be foolish on WWE's end to put the belt on Goldberg. I know some people are giving the idea of Goldberg beating Gunther for the world title. Goldberg wins the world title, and then he gets cashed in by Seth Rollins. Because if you guys don't know, if you guys are living under a rock, Seth Rollins holds the Money in the Bank briefcase. Everybody's giving the idea of Goldberg beating Gunther for the world title. Goldberg wins the world title, and then he gets cashed in by Seth Rollins. On one hand, I could see that happening. But at the same time, Goldberg beat Gunther. Why would you want Goldberg to beat Gunther? Gunther has been booked so dominant throughout the past couple of years. You're going to feed him to Goldberg? Are you joking with me? I wouldn't do that. I think it's a stupid move, if you ask me. Why would you feed Gunther, who you've been booking so well throughout the past couple of years, not only as IC champion, but also as World Heavyweight Champion? Maybe that's debatable as World Heavyweight Champion, but whatever. It's a mixed opinion. Why would you feed him to Goldberg, who is on his last legs, and he's eventually going to retire after that match? It makes no sense because Gunther's not going to get that win back. He's not going to get that win back, so it just makes no sense. There's only one logical way to do this, and that is for Goldberg to lose. Goldberg should lose, and Gunther should get the win. Now, if they still want to do the cash-in, they can do the cash-in. Only if Gunther wins. If Gunther wins, then they can do the cash-in, in my opinion. But they shouldn't do the cash-in on Goldberg. Because even though Goldberg would lose the title in that scenario, Goldberg would still beat Gunther clean. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't make sense. Sometimes I get both of those names mixed up, considering both of their names sound very similar. Gunther and Goldberg. Gunther and Goldberg. Gunther and Goldberg. Also, they both start with the G. But still, Goldberg should not win the world title and then get cashed in by Rollins. No. It should be the other way around. Gunther should win, and then he should get cashed in by Rollins. That's exactly what should happen. But we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. Now, in terms of Goldberg's, physical status, Goldberg looked like he was limping on that Monday on that Raw. I'm gonna be realistic with you guys. Like, on one hand, I'm a little worried for Goldberg, considering, number one, Goldberg is at a very, he's at that age where he just shouldn't be in the ring. He really should not be in the ring. The fact that WWE allowed this to happen, in my opinion, to me, they shouldn't have done it, but I understand why they want to do it. Goldberg wants to go out on his own terms, and he wants to have his last match that he was promised. But still, I'm just not as interested in this match. To me, this is a nothing match. I already know the outcome of this match, and it's going to be Gunther getting the win and a possible cash-in. That's what I see happening. That's what I envision at this point. But I understand why they did it. Number one, it's Goldberg, but number two, it's in Atlanta. And number three, they need a big match for Saturday night's main event, considering AEW a couple hours before Saturday night's main event is going to host their biggest show of the year. And they essentially want to take that fire away from AEW. That's exactly what's going on over here. That's exactly what's happening. But in terms of Goldberg, I mean, let's be real with ourselves. The last time a Goldberg match was very interesting. The last time a Goldberg match was interesting was back at WrestleMania 33. That was the last time a Goldberg match was interesting. Because think about this. Goldberg, of course, the peak of Goldberg was back in 1998. And Goldberg, the exact time that Goldberg reached his peak was in that Georgia Dome episode of Nitro in July of 98, where he beat Hulk Hogan in front of, 30,000 fans? Well over 30,000 fans at the Georgia Dome. That was literally the peak of Goldberg. After that, of course, he lost his title in December to Kevin Nash in very controversial fashion, even though he had that streak going. Kevin Nash was like, I don't think, he's starting to get booed by the fans, even though the fans still loved Goldberg. It made no sense. WCW was essentially the Wild South. That's what it was. But WCW closes. He comes into the WWE. He had a very piss poor run in the WWE. He was on a 1-year contract back in 2003. And he had a very, he did win the world title, but his run with a lot of people was just deemed as a failure. And I do not blame him for saying that, because if you look at his run, essentially, Goldberg's first run in the WWE has been a disaster. He comes back in 2016. Everybody was hyped up. He faces Brock Lesnar. He squashes Brock Lesnar in one of the best moments of all time, in my opinion. And then he comes back. He beats Kevin Owens at Fastlane out of nowhere. And then WrestleMania 33 comes by. He has that rematch with Brock Lesnar and essentially has one of the best matches of his entire career. And it was a quick match. It was a squash match. But then after that Brock Lesnar match at WrestleMania 33, Goldberg would sporadically come back during the time when WWE would do these Saudi Arabia shows and nobody would care. Because number one, those shows were glorified houses. But number two, it just made no sense. And people just hated the fact that Goldberg would just come in and just take over title spots. Remember The Fiend? Remember how badly they squashed The Fiend? You remember that very bad Undertaker match where essentially, Goldberg botched a jackhammer on The Undertaker? Yeah, it was terrible. But this is Goldberg's last match. If he wants to go out on his terms, he has the right to go out on his terms. But in my opinion, I'm just not as excited about it. I already know the outcome, and it's probably going to be Gunther getting the win and getting cashed in by Seth Rollins. Those are my thoughts on Goldberg. All right. Moving on. Liv Morgan this past Monday on Raw got injured. She suffered a shoulder injury during her match against Kairi Sane. And in an update by Fightful, the word within WWE is that Liv Morgan's injury will require surgery. This is causing a significant creative reshuffling as she was involved in a number of programs, and she would likely miss a number of months. We wish her a speedy recovery. I agree. I wish Liv Morgan a speedy recovery. It's not fun to get injured when you're in wrestling, man. Everybody talks about how wrestling is quote unquote not fake. I don't like using the word fake. It's predetermined, but wrestlers, they put their bodies on the line every week, and the schedule is very rigorous. And they put their bodies on the line for the entertainment of the fans. And it's never fun to get injured. Wrestlers actually get injured. And unfortunately, Liv Morgan, she will be out for a while. I believe she was slated to go on and face, Nikki Bella at the Evolution show. Or maybe they were going to have a scenario in which they were going to bring back the Bella Twins for the women's tag team titles. But clearly those plans have changed. And Liv Morgan is going to be out, and she, from what it looks like, is going to be missing that Evolution show, which is very unfortunate for Liv Morgan, because Liv Morgan, throughout the past couple of years, especially ever since she joined the Judgment Day, she's been doing the best work of her career. She has literally been doing the best work of her career, and unfortunately, she suffered that injury. It's nobody's fault. I know there was a lot of discourse on social media as to, whose fault this was. Oh my God, this was Kairi Sane's fault. Look, accidents happen in wrestling. People need to understand the idea that accidents happen. Accidents happen. That's it. As Chris Jericho would say, a happy accident would happen. Like, Kairi Sane did not purposefully injure Liv Morgan. It makes no sense. I don't know where fans are getting this notion from. Accidents happen in wrestling, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Accidents happen in wrestling. So, cut the crap. Moving on. WWE SmackDown. Remember how we were talking about a couple weeks ago how SmackDown, from what it looks like, is moving to 3 hours or staying 3 hours for the foreseeable future? Well, reportedly, SmackDown will be returning to 2 hours starting next month. I'm reading this from Sports Illustrated's website, but the original source is Mike Johnson of PW Insider. Variety is the original source. My bad, my apologies. Variety is reporting that the new series called Rainmaker will debut on Friday, August 15th on the USA Network. But Mike Johnson of PW Insider says that the episodes of the Blue Brand will return to the old 2-hour format long before then. Mike Johnson is reporting that the target for WWE to drop the third hour is on the upcoming Independence Day episode of SmackDown, which is on July 4th. There's been no confirmation from either reps for TKO or WWE on the impending shift, but it was confirmed to be happening at some point this year by WWE Chief Content Officer Paul Triple H Levesque back in January. SmackDown was bumped to 3 hours as part of a deal worked out between WWE and the USA Network during the transition phase of moving Raw to Netflix, but the extension was designed to be temporary. We'll continue to keep you updated with the latest information on the SmackDown runtime as it becomes available. So what are my thoughts on this? Hallelujah. Hallelujah. SmackDown, finally, we don't have to deal with the drag that is a 3-hour wrestling show. I mean, don't even get me started on the 4-hour blocks that AEW try to make me sit through. I mean, as soon as that second hour finished, I dipped. But I was one of those people, and I know a lot of other people. We were all suffering when it comes to, of course, 3-hour wrestling shows. And when we first found out that SmackDown was going to be moved to 3 hours, everybody was like, oh my God, here we go. And let's be real with ourselves. SmackDown has dipped in quality. SmackDown has literally dipped in quality ever since it moved to 3 hours. I don't care what anybody says, but SmackDown is by far the worst wrestling show throughout the week. It is. I purposefully, not only purposefully, but I intentionally skipped SmackDown this week. I only saw the highlights. Now, part of me kind of regrets that because the Pipebomb promo took place on the end of that show, but still. I intentionally missed SmackDown because literally, if you watch SmackDown, especially in the 3-hour format, the majority of the show is essentially filler. There's a lot of filler crap that goes on with the show and nothing really important. I only care about the main event stuff that happens on SmackDown. At least Raw is a little more interesting. Raw is way more interesting than SmackDown as a show. Heck, I'll go as far as to say that Dynamite, even though Dynamite does have its flaws, Dynamite as a show is 10 times better than SmackDown left and right. Even though Dynamite has its problems, but SmackDown as a show is terrible. And a lot of that has to do with the 3-hour format. Now, is this going to be a scenario once SmackDown moves to 2 hours? Is this going to be a scenario where SmackDown immediately gets better again? No. Just because you bump a show from 3 hours to back to 2 hours doesn't mean your show automatically is going to get better. It all depends on the creative process. That's it. It all boils down to what WWE has in store for the brand when it comes to their creative direction. That's it. That is what it boils down to, unfortunately. That is what it boils down to. We're going to have to wait and see what happens, but this is nothing but great news simply because of the fact that, number one, a wrestling show being 3 hours is never a good sign, even though you get more money out of it from a business standpoint. From the fans' point of view, watching a 3-hour wrestling show is just a huge drag. It is a ridiculous drag. Like, seriously, you're on your phone almost every single minute, just, wondering what time is it? That's literally me when I watch SmackDown. And that was me when I watched Raw when it was a 3-hour show. Nowadays Raw is technically a 2-hour show, but every week the runtime for Raw is different considering Raw is on Netflix. But normally, when I'm watching SmackDown, I'm literally on my phone. I'm like this. I'm watching a show. Maybe something doesn't pique my interest, and I go back on my phone and I just check what time is it, or I'm on Twitter. You know what I'm saying? SmackDown as a 3-hour show 100% hurt the show tremendously. It hurt the show tremendously. But not only that, you have the creative writers to blame for that as well. The show just sucked. It sucked, and it still sucks. even though there can be good things that happen on the show, there's still things that suck on the show. Nothing feels important on the show, unfortunately. But I'm happy that SmackDown is going back to 2 hours because I am sick and tired of those 3-hour shows. Sick and tired of those 3-hour shows. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. Moving on. Moving on with the WrestleHavoc podcast. Before we continue on with this edition of the show, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the friggin' referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. If you guys are watching on the WNN Facebook page, YouTube channel, or on the WNN app, I thank you guys so much for watching this week's edition of the WrestleHavoc podcast. Of course, this is the podcast where we talk about all things professional wrestling. And we're going to continue on with the show. Of course, before we continue on with the show, if you guys want to check out the new channel that I recently opened up, WrestleHavoc Clips. Of course, WrestleHavoc Clips showcases all of the clips from this very podcast, the WrestleHavoc Podcast. If you guys want to check out the WrestleHavoc Clips channel, the link will be in the description below. All right, moving on with the WrestleHavoc Podcast, we are going to be talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin, yes, has been in the news, and a lot of people were speculating as to whether or not he has one more match left in him. Well, I'm reading this from Fightful Select. We may not have seen the last of Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin, of course, has effectively retired from pro wrestling in 2003, and his last match was against The Rock back at WrestleMania 19, and didn't have another match for 19 years. Austin came out of retirement to face Kevin Owens in the main event of WrestleMania 38 in 2022 in Dallas, Texas. And of course, that was in the main event of night one. And it was a phenomenal main event. Austin looked great. Since then, Austin hasn't necessarily closed the door on a return to the ring, but hasn't been eager to jump in the ring either. Fightful Select reported that he was actually approached about wrestling Roman Reigns for WrestleMania in 2023. Think about that. Steve Austin wrestling Roman Reigns in 2023. Wow. But didn't end up happening. But maybe something else will. However, Fightful Select heard word around WrestleMania weekend that Austin intimidated that he might not quite be finished. More than one source around him this weekend claimed that Austin told them that he, quote unquote, might have one more in him. He might have one more match in him, presuming a match and not an ATV ride. Sorry about that. Like, the words were very weird, misspelled over here. We haven't quite heard how he was feeling after WrestleMania, but multiple people that saw him that weekend claimed that he was at least open for the idea under the right circumstances. Austin had claimed that TKO hadn't reached out to him since taking over, but then he made WrestleMania week appearances. A number of wrestlers have approached management about facing Steve Austin in recent years. Naturally, CM Punk was the name that was being tossed around internally quite a bit. Not only that, his name was being tossed around all over social media once this report dropped. We will provide an update when we get more information. Steve Austin. Steve Austin. What are my thoughts on Steve Austin? Look, if Steve Austin feels like he has one more match left in him, all power to him. All power to him. If he wants to come out of retirement for one more match, he has every right to do so. But at the same time, he doesn't need to come back. I think we all need to accept the reality that Steve Austin is retired. He just is. As much as I would love for a match between CM Punk and Stone Cold Steve Austin, that is like one of the biggest dream matches that you could possibly book. Let's be real with ourselves. That's like literally the ultimate dream match right there. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus CM Punk. Think about that. That's a huge match. A huge match. But again, it's Steve Austin coming out of retirement. Do you know what I'm saying? They're not like, it's not a situation in which Steve Austin is coming back full time. No. Steve Austin has been retired since 2003. He came out of retirement back in 2022 during that match with Kevin Owens, which was great. But then he, of course, went back to retirement because, Steve Austin is retired. You know what I'm saying? The fact that we are asking for Steve Austin to come back to wrestling, as much as I would like it, dude, leave Austin alone. Like, leave Austin alone. As much as I would love for Steve Austin to come out of retirement, Steve Austin is at that age where he just doesn't need to wrestle anymore. He's been retired since 2003. Let him stay retired. Let him stay retired. I would love a match with Steve Austin and CM Punk, but again, we had to accept the reality that Steve Austin is retired. He's retired. Why do we need to drag Austin out? You got a full-blown roster of talent that you can utilize. You don't need to drag Stone Cold Steve Austin out of retirement. Would I love for that to happen? Yeah, but I'm a realist. And I don't think Steve Austin should come out of retirement, man. I don't think he should punish his body more than he already done throughout his career. He doesn't need that. Steve Austin is like, where is he, in his mid to late 50s? Like he realistically, let's be real with ourselves, he doesn't need another match. He doesn't need to wrestle another match. It's like Ric Flair. Well, no, it's not like Ric Flair, because Ric Flair, like willingly went out of retirement. He's like, oh, I want to have my last match, and it was embarrassing for Ric Flair. Stone Cold Steve Austin does not need to come out of retirement. He's in his 50s, bro. And I believe he's heading into his 60s. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know his exact age. But still, we don't need to see Steve Austin come out of retirement. Maybe he can do brief appearances left and right, but we don't need to see Steve Austin wrestle. We don't. He's retired. Let him stay retired. And this is coming from somebody who's a big fan of Steve Austin. I mean, you cannot name one person that is not a fan of Steve Austin. You cannot. But still, if you're a fan of Steve Austin, in my opinion, even though we would all love to see it, me personally, when it comes to the health of the talent, have Steve Austin stay retired. He doesn't need another match. He does not need another match. That's my opinion on the matter. Moving on to AEW. Yes, AEW is in the news. And we're going to start off with the big story coming out of AEW. And that was, of course, AEW and Jon Moxley sued for negligence, civil assault, and battery by a production crew member. This is according to John Alba. I'm reading this from Sports Illustrated's website. A production crew member who has worked with All Elite Wrestling since 2019 has filed a civil lawsuit against the company and AEW World Champion Jon Moxley. In it, he alleges various degrees of negligence by AEW and Moxley alongside civil assault and battery against Moxley concerning an incident on AEW Dynamite back in 2023. The lawsuit was filed against the parties on May 30th in the Wayne County Circuit Court by Christopher Dispenza, a longtime wrestling and entertainment production crew member who started doing contract work with AEW in 2019. Dispenza is not a direct employee of AEW and provided services to Broadcast Service Group, which supplies crew for AEW. His legal team, Right Law PLLC, told The Takedown on Sports Illustrated that he has not done work with AEW since December 5th of 2024 and was demoted by Broadcast Service Group to the role of carpenter without explanation. As of Monday morning, he had not yet received a response to the filming of the promotion, or the filing of the promotion, not the filming, the filing from the promotion. Continuing on, Dispenza claims that he suffered severe neck and shoulder injuries as a result of being shoved to the ground unexpectedly by Moxley during a match with Kenny Omega. Of course, that was the, I believe, steel cage match that took place in the spring of 2023. And I have a photo right here. This is the shot of Jon Moxley essentially shoving from what it looks to be the crew member that is suing AEW and Jon Moxley when it comes to this whole situation. That was the exact scene of Jon Moxley during the match shoving the production crew member. Dispenza alleges in the lawsuit that the incident resulted in him requiring cervical fusion surgery, shoulder surgery, and treatment for other unspecified injuries. Dispenza said that the injuries occurred on the May 10th, 2023 edition of AEW Dynamite in Detroit. There, Moxley faced Omega in the cage match, which ended up spilling to the outside. Moxley went to grab a screwdriver to use on Omega. In doing so, he shoved Dispenza to the ground. The lawsuit claims that Moxley was supposed to only grab the screwdriver, and Dispenza took an unplanned fall as a result of being shoved. His legal team alleges this is an example of physical assault civil assault and battery claiming that in allegedly deviating from the script, Moxley either showed intent to harm Dispenza, which I don't think is the case, or, quote unquote, at the minimum, a complete disregard for whether harm was a result. I think it was a nature. Look, I'm going to continue on with this lawsuit, but when I first read this lawsuit, I thought it was kind of laughable. But at the same time, there's valid reasons as to why this crew member did sue AEW, and I'll explain my reasons as to why. But if you look at the footage, if you look at this photo, I'm going to pull it up once again. If you look at this photo, this was the exact shot of Jon Moxley shoving Dispenza, who is the production crew member that is filing this lawsuit. If you actually look at the footage of the actual match, the shove does not look that bad. I know I sound ridiculous when I say that, but it does not look as bad. But at the same time, we are not that production crew member. He may have receipts. He may have actual documents showcasing that, hey, yeah, I did suffer this injury when it came to this fall, and you cannot blame him for that. But I'll continue on my opinion after I read this. Full lawsuit, or this whole article, I should say. However, multiple high-level AEW sources with knowledge of Moxley's working history with the company. Actually, no, continuing on. Actually, I missed the whole paragraph. My bad. The lawsuit alleges that Moxley, quote unquote, had a history of disciplinary issues before this incident involving other people while under AEW's employee, agency, or contractual relationship. It also says that past disciplinary offenses by Moxley include a documented history of unpredictability as well as a lack of control by defendant AEW, all of which were known or should have been known to defendant AEW at the time of this assault. That's very interesting. The lawsuit alleges that Moxley had a quote-unquote history of disciplinary issues before this incident involving other people while under an AEW contract. And he's still under an AEW contract. I don't see that being the case. If anything, from what I heard from a lot of people all over the wrestling industry, Jon Moxley essentially is one of the most respected guys out there. I haven't heard a single report ever since Jon Moxley joined AEW of him having disciplinary issues. Now, could this be a situation that AEW may be keeping information, away from the public? Because they're very well known to do that. They're very known for their NDAs. AEW is very known for their NDAs. I mean, didn't they have CM Punk sign an NDA? Did they have Cody Rhodes and Brandy Rhodes sign an NDA? Yeah. But, I mean, I haven't heard any story of Jon Moxley having disciplinary issues. I think that's a false statement, but I may be totally wrong. But I haven't heard any story at all. And I think a lot of people even may agree with me with this. We haven't heard any story of disciplinary issues when it comes to Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley is a crazy dude, but he's not like a crazy dude outside the ring. He may be, but we haven't heard any issues of disciplinary when it comes to Jon Moxley. We just haven't. If anything, Jon Moxley is one of the most professional guys out there. He may not look like it, but he is. However, multiple high-level AEW sources with knowledge of Moxley's working history with the company and not speaking in on official capacity on AEW's behalf told The Takedown on Sports Illustrated that they were unaware of any history of disciplinary issues with Moxley, noting that he is respected within the promotion by talent and management. You see? Exactly what I just said. He's respected by talent and management. One referred to him as, quote-unquote, a locker room leader and disputed the characterization of Moxley given in the lawsuit. The filming also claims Moxley and AEW are responsible for exhibiting gross negligence, suggesting, quote-unquote, by going off script and violently shoving plaintiff, who is only a crew member, to the ground, Moxley demonstrated a substantial lack of concern for whether a severe injury would result to a production crew member at the event. It adds, in taking no precautions or preventative measures to protect the production staff, defendant AEW's actions likewise show a reckless disregard for the safety of production staff, which goes beyond simple inadvertence. My bad. I completely pronounced that wrong. The complaint also accuses AEW of negligence in hiring and training Moxley. That's a weird statement. The complaint also accuses AEW of negligence in hiring and training Moxley. In hiring and training Moxley, dude, Jon Moxley was like one of the first signings that AEW, I believe, had. Okay, take that back. He was not one of the first signings. It was clearly Britt Baker and the Elite and Chris Jericho, but he made his debut on the very first AEW show. A portion of Count claims AEW has a responsibility to exert reasonable control over its employees, agents, or contracted individuals to ensure safety for our performers, production crew, and the general audience. The 39-year-old Moxley has been wrestling since 2004 and has worked for not only AEW but WWE, TNA, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and other major promotions throughout his career. Also, he wrestled in the deathmatch scene in the independents in promotions such as CZW. Dispense's legal representation tells The Takedown on Sports Illustrated that he claims AEW upper management was aware of the incident, but says he never discussed it with them. He alleges to have met with Tony Khan and AEW General Counsel Chris Peck about potential full-time employment opportunities in the months after the incident, but acknowledged that there were never prior conversations about the injuries he says he sustained. His attorney also noted Dispenza said he never filed an unofficial incident report that night because he had another job on tour he had to get back to, but he claimed that he spoke with 3 individuals that evening about getting hurt. His legal team says Dispenza relayed his alleged injuries to ringside physician Dr. Michael Sampson, director of performance psychology, Chris Manzione, correct me if I'm wrong, if I pronounced that right, and a member of the athletic training staff. Dispenza claims Sampson was upset over the situation, saying that all stunts and interactions outside the ring must be approved by Sampson beforehand. Sampson was near Dispenza when the incident occurred. He said Sampson asked him to go to see the training staff. Dispenza's representation told The Takedown on Sports Illustrated that he was eventually told that he would not be treated any longer by the AEW athletic training staff and that the incident was never acknowledged again. It also said Dispenza and Moxley never discussed the incident beyond briefly after the segment. Dispenza's team said that he's looking to obtain compensation for quote-unquote injuries suffered due to actions of the wrestler and the company he worked for. And the filing says that the amount in controversy exceeds $25,000, which in retrospect, if you look at it, it's not really a high amount, but it could easily be higher than $25,000. I don't think $25,000 is the limit. If he's going to ask for money, it's probably going to be more than $25,000. It claims he incurred damages including, but not limited to, medical expenses, disability and permanent and serious disfigurement, wage loss and lost earnings capacity, pain and suffering, exemplary damages for mental and emotional anxiety, humiliation and indignity, demulation to business reputation and opportunities, other economic and non-economic damages not yet known, and all other damages available under Michigan law. The Takedown reached out to an AEW spokesman regarding the lawsuit and allegations detailed in this piece, to which they replied, AEW does not comment on pending litigation. Moxie is scheduled to defend the AEW World Championship against Hangman Adam Page AEW All In on July 12th. The status conference for the lawsuit is currently scheduled for August 29th. Okay. There's a lot of things that was informed in this whole article. Forgive me for botching a couple of those statements because, again, legal lingo, bro, is mad complex. Legal language is mad complex, especially if you're a lawyer. But if you're a lawyer, this stuff is easy for you. But for somebody like me who has no experience in law, it's quite tough for people like me. But when it comes to this whole situation, my first thoughts when I first heard about this story was, this is kind of dumb. Those were my initial thoughts. And a part of me still thinks that way, especially if you look at the footage. And this is just a shot of the footage of Jon Moxley shoving that cameraman that is filing this lawsuit. But at the same time, even though it doesn't look like a very bad shove, and clearly Jon Moxley is in character, I don't think he intentionally did it. I think it was a situation that Jon Moxley was essentially in the moment. He was essentially in the moment during the match with Kenny Omega. Because when you're a wrestler, you know, you react in the moment, especially when something crazy is going on. Like if you're a wrestler, you act in the moment because you're in this big storyline. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to this whole situation, the person that is filing this lawsuit is basically saying that there was no discussions of him being a part of the show, or there was no discussions of him being shoved down by the wrestler. Normally, when situations like this happen, essentially this whole like idea is all planned out. So like, for example, if you are a cameraman if you are a cameraman and you're being discussed to be like hit by a wrestler, it's literally normally planned out beforehand. Like, you are known that is going to happen beforehand, and then, you get on with your business. In this case, the guy that is filing this lawsuit, he was the cameraman, and he was not, planned to get shoved like that. Now, again, even though you look at the footage, the shove doesn't look that bad, but we don't know how the actual person that got shoved felt. Maybe he did feel that way. But one thing is for sure. If you are, and this is something that we really need to talk about. If you are a cameraman or in any other role that is not a wrestler, and you are not essentially, I would say, if you are going to be a part in some sort of angle where a wrestler puts your hands on you in storyline, of course you are going. Of course, you are going to plan that out with said wrestler beforehand, before the show goes on the air. Everything in wrestling is essentially planned. If you have a situation like this situation in which you were not planned to get shoved by that said wrestler, you have every right to sue the company because you essentially got assaulted. Even though it sounds stupid on one hand, the guy has every right to sue the company because he was not planned to get shoved. He just got shoved out of nowhere by Jon Moxley. Now, again, I'm going to look at it from Jon Moxley's perspective. He was probably in the moment when he shoved the guy. I don't think it was a situation of Jon Moxley intentionally shoving the cameraman because he wanted to shove the cameraman. No, it was not that situation at all. It was just a scenario, in my opinion, of Jon Moxley reacting in the moment. Just him reacting in the moment. But again, if you are not planned to be shoved like that, then you have every right to sue the company. And in this case, the guy that is suing AEW had every right to sue the company. AEW needs to be very careful, and I say this to WWE as well. You need to be very careful with who you put your hands on when it comes to a wrestling match or a wrestling angle. Because again, you can end up in situations like this. Now, how does this situation go away in terms of AEW? Easy. You pay the guy. If AEW wants this situation to go away, and clearly they do, they're just going to have to do one thing and one thing only, and that is pay the guy. AEW has the money. Tony Khan has the money. And for God's sakes, the guy's a billionaire. More than $25,000. I mean, $25,000 is pennies to Tony Khan. But more than $25,000, maybe like $100,000, is nothing to Tony Khan either. AEW is literally making money hand over fist. They can easily afford this. They can pay the guy and call it a day. And that is what AEW should do. And also, AEW needs to take more precaution in the things that they do, especially in situations like this. If you are involving a cameraman or somebody else, a production staff, plan things out with that said person. Don't just do things for the sake of doing things. Don't shove guys that are not part of the show. Because the moment you shove guys that are part of the show, you end up in situations like this. The guy had every right to sue AEW and Jon Moxley. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say Jon Moxley intentionally shoved the guy for the sake of wanting to shove the guy. It was clear as day, and this is Jon Moxley we're talking about. Jon Moxley's the type of individual that is in the moment when he's in a match. He's always in the moment. He's always in the moment. That was the situation that took place. He saw somebody that was in his way, and as he was in the moment, and I believe he was the heel in that match, he shoved the guy away because he was like right by him. But again, it was Jon Moxley essentially being in the moment. I don't think it was a situation that he targeted that one guy and he was like, oh yeah, I want to push this guy. I'm going to push him. No, it was a situation that Jon Moxley was just in the moment of during the match. And that's what every wrestler feels whenever they're wrestling in a match. They're always in the moment because they're acting something out. But again, the guy was not planned to be shoved, and he had every right to sue AEW. You can say that this is a cash grab on his end, and maybe it is. But essentially, he got assaulted. He essentially got assaulted. The shove does not look that bad, but we do not know the nature of his injuries. We don't have, we can't judge him on the nature of his injuries. We can't judge him for saying, he's a scared little prick. He just wants money from AEW. Dude, you don't know the injuries that this guy sustained. He may have medical records saying that, hey, he sustained this injury from this particular shove. AEW really needs to be careful. They really need to be careful. If you are planning something out with a non-wrestler, that being a person from production, a cameraman, if you're going to plan something out or do some sort of angle that is involving those types of individuals, plan it out with those people. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it. Again, I understand Jon Moxley's perspective. Jon Moxley was in the moment, but still, be careful. Be careful. Plan things out beforehand, because then you end up making mistakes like this. Now, in terms of the whole disciplinary thing with Jon Moxley, that is a new thing. I don't think Jon Moxley has a history of disciplinary issues, especially in AEW. And AEW is known to have a lot of drama in, backstage. There's a lot of reports, especially throughout the past couple of years, that there was a lot of drama in AEW. But Jon Moxley was not one of those people. I mean, even AEW did state in this lawsuit, like, dude, Jon Moxley is literally one of the most respected guys in the locker room. He's essentially a locker room leader. You know what I'm saying? So honestly, I really don't know what to think of this. But again, the guy had every right to sue the company. And the only way that this goes away is for AEW to just pay the man. Just pay the man. That is it. Just pay the man. Don't even fight it. Just pay the man. Settle. Pay the guy. That is it. And just take more precaution in the future, because that's what AEW needs to do. If there's any promotion out there that needs to take more precaution with the things that they do, it is AEW, because AEW tends to go overboard sometimes when it comes to the things that they do. They go overboard with blood. They go overboard with violence. And look, I'm somebody that gets a kick out of violence in wrestling. But at the same time, I also know when enough is enough. And AEW really needs to take precaution when it comes to those scenarios. This is no different. You will end up in situations if you don't learn your lesson. So the only way for this to go away is for AEW to just pay the man. They can afford it. Just pay the guy. That is it. This is not a Ryan Nemeth situation, by the way. The whole Ryan Nemeth situation is another can of worms that is just a ludicrous lawsuit. And if you guys know about the Ryan Nemeth situation, you know that lawsuit was ludicrous, ridiculous. This is not one of those instances. The guy had every right to sue the company. My first thoughts, now I will say, and I have tweets on record, like my first initial thoughts with this was, this is so stupid. But at the same time, the guy, he had every right to sue the company, because again, he was not planning to get shoved the way he did. Even though it did not look like a bad shove, we do not know the injuries that this guy sustained. So if he sustained legitimate injuries like he says he did, there's no defending AEW in that case. AEW should just pay the man the money that he is asking for and just call it a day. That's just the way how I would go about things. I wouldn't even fight this case, but it is what it is. So AEW really needs to take more precautions when it comes to situations like this. All right, moving on. We're going to be talking about Athena. So, of course, everybody was wondering where Athena is at. Of course, Athena is the current AEW, or not AEW, Ring of Honor Women's World Champion. Well, according to Fightful, we have an update on Mercedes, Athena, Toni Storm, and Mariah May. There's a lot of rumors regarding these women. Athena versus Mercedes was not the plan for AEW All In, even though a lot of people wanted that match to take place. There was recently a report regarding plans for AEW All In that suggested that Mercedes Moné versus Athena was in the cards for All In, and that Mariah May leaving adjusted things. Specifically, that a recent Owen Hart Cup Foundation tournament, that Mercedes was open to losing to set up an All In rematch. This has been refuted by a number of AEW sources as never having been the plan. We were told that Mercedes hasn't been opposed to losing to anyone. It just hasn't been broached during the course of the push she's been on. We can't speak to her personal pitches regarding losing to Athena in the Owen Hart Cup tournament, but the plan for Toni Storm versus Mercedes Moné has been in the cards for All In since last year, even while Mariah May was still champion. Mariah May has informed AEW that she will be leaving the company by the Hollywood ending, which she did. But by then, AEW had already had their long created plans for Mercedes Moné versus Toni Storm set. Fightful has been told that Mariah May didn't affect those plans whatsoever. It only affected the early discussions as to who Mariah May would face if she was still around. There were some early discussions internally for Mariah May to compete in a non-title feud, but that was when she was, still a part of AEW, but of course we all know she left and she's now Blake Monroe in NXT. One source indicated that the plan for Mercedes Moné versus Toni Storm was something that was planned even as far back as a year before the show. Okay, everybody wanted Athena versus Mercedes Moné to happen at All In. But I understand AEW's motive as to why they didn't book that match, considering Toni Storm versus Mercedes Moné clearly is the bigger match. Now, in terms of Athena, of course, Athena clearly looks like somebody that wants to wrestle at All In. But I will say this. I think Athena is one of the best wrestlers out there. She's one of the best female wrestlers out there. To me, I think it is a crime on AEW's end that she has been essentially regulated or delegated to Ring of Honor and not AEW programming. To me, it's a crime, especially with the talent that Athena has. To me, I feel like they are doing her a disservice by just having her wrestle on Ring of Honor. Why do I say that? Oh, but she's getting pushed. She's doing the best work of her career. Yeah, you may say that. But think about this. Imagine if, you are like one of the best wrestlers out there and you want to go straight to the main roster, but you're relegated to like Evolve. Imagine if you're doing the best work of your career, but you're relegated to like maybe main event. Imagine if you're just wrestling on main event, but you're doing phenomenal work. And clearly WWE does not want you to wrestle on the main roster. That is essentially the situation with Athena in Ring of Honor. Athena is wrestling on Ring of Honor, and she's doing great work, by the way. She's doing phenomenal work. They're booking her really well. But the problem is that she is on Ring of Honor. What is the problem I have? What is the problem that I have with Ring of Honor? Ring of Honor, with all due respect, is a dead brand. A dead brand. Why do I say it's a dead brand? Because the Ring of Honor that Tony Khan is running is not the Ring of Honor that fans loved all the way back in the 2000s. This is a very different Ring of Honor. When Tony Khan first bought Ring of Honor, he wanted to run Ring of Honor at the same time as AEW, and he's doing that right now. But at the same time, he also wanted a television deal with Ring of Honor. Why do you think he put the belt on Chris Jericho? He put the belt on Chris Jericho not once but twice because he wanted to get national television distribution for Ring of Honor. So what happened? Warner Brothers Discovery was like, no, we don't want this. We want AEW because clearly AEW is the bigger brand. Common sense. So what did Tony Khan do? What he did was he had the infrastructure set for Honor Club, which was Ring of Honor's streaming service. And he essentially relaunched Ring of Honor Club. And now, if you want to watch Ring of Honor, you're going to have to pay $10 a month to watch that show. So think about it. Athena is regulated to a show that nobody watches. And the show that nobody watches is a show that you have to pay $10 a month to watch. So you're basically paying $10 a month to watch WWE Main Event, WWE Superstars. You know what I'm saying? That is essentially my take on the whole situation. The fact that Athena has been regulated to Ring of Honor to me is ridiculous. I understand Tony Khan's motive of, establishing Ring of Honor as a brand, but he has failed miserably in that case. Athena should be delivered better material, in my opinion. And she's been doing great work in Ring of Honor. But again, all the work that she's been doing, imagine her doing that work on AEW's main television programs, on Dynamite, on Collision. It would be so much more impactful. But no, she's regulated to Ring of Honor. Nobody cares about Ring of Honor. Nobody watches Ring of Honor. Nobody watches the pay-per-views. Nobody watches the television show. It's ridiculous. Like, bro, they would literally have every week, Ring of Honor television would be like a whole hour show or a 2-hour show full of nothing matches that nobody even cares about. That is essentially Ring of Honor. Nobody cares about Ring of Honor. Just nobody cares about Ring of Honor at all. And the fact that Athena is a part of Ring of Honor and not AEW to me is a travesty. She's that talented, and you're going to put her in Ring of Honor, a show that nobody watches. Dude, if I'm AEW, I'd book Athena at the forefront of the AEW women's division. That's what I would do. Imagine a feud between Toni Storm and Athena. That'd be very interesting. I would love to have to see a feud between Mercedes Moné and Athena. Because you want to know why? Because that feud is money. A feud with Athena and Toni Storm is money. Why are you relegating her to just Ring of Honor? Nobody cares about Ring of Honor. It is a show nobody watches. Nobody watches Ring of Honor. You have to pay $10 a month for a show that nobody watches. Tony Khan has failed. Like he tried to put Ring of Honor on television, and he's failed numerous times. Hell, he was even offered a television slot by the CW network back in 2022 to put Ring of Honor on the air, but he refused. He missed his chance. Ring of Honor is a dead brand. Who cares? It's a shame that Athena is a part of Ring of Honor, but it is what it is. All right, moving on. Of course, this past Wednesday, we had Grand Slam Mexico. AEW hosted Grand Slam Mexico from, of course, CMLL's home turf, that being Arena Mexico. And I'm going to give you guys the results real quick. Of course, Hangman Page opened the show and he cut a phenomenal promo. He spoke in Spanish. Hangman Page spoke in Spanish, by the way, which is phenomenal. Of course, we had Bandito, Templario, Atlantis Jr., Adam Cole, and Brody King, and Daniel Garcia versus Hechicero, Kyle Fletcher, Takeshita, Josh Alexander, Lance Archer, Dax Harwood, and Volador Jr., and the babyfaces ended up getting the win. We had Kazuchika Okada defeating Mark Briscoe. Of course, Mystico defeated MJF via disqualification. We had Hologram defeating Leo Rush, Ricochet, and Mascara Dorada. And after that, we had Mercedes Moné defeating Lexius, and she becomes the new CMLL Women's Champion. So she holds another title. The Death Riders, that being Jon Moxley, Wheeler Yuta, the Beast Mortos, and the Young Bucks take on Swerve Strickland, Will Ospreay, Samoa Joe, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Shibata. The Death Riders ended up getting the win along with the Beast Mortos and the Young Bucks. What are my thoughts on this show? This was not a bad show. I mean, the crowd was absolutely fantastic. But if you really think about it, this show was essentially a glorified house show. That is exactly what it was. It was essentially a glorified house show. And there was no real storyline progression when it came to the show. When it came to All In. So honestly, say what you want. It was not a bad show, but again, it felt like a glorified house show because there was a lot of filler matches that took place on the show. And that was because they tried to cram everybody into the show because they knew for a fact this show was going to be a big deal. Not only that, there was a lot of CML involvement in this show, considering Arena Mexico is owned, I believe, by CMLL, and CMLL is AEW's partner. So they wanted to have a lot of CMLL representation on this show. Moving on. And this is going to be our final thing that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be doing a quick card rundown for AEW All In Texas. Of course, we have the world title on the line as Jon Moxley defends his title against Hangman Page. We have the AEW Women's World Championship on the line as Timeless Toni Storm will be defending her title against multiple championship belts, Mercedes Moné. Yes, Mercedes Moné holds 6 world titles. It's ridiculous. It's insane. We also got the winner-take-all match for the AEW Continental Championship and the AEW International Championship, which will be fused in the AEW United Championship, as Kazuchika Okada will face Kenny Omega. And, of course, we now got the Casino Gauntlet match, which will be taking place at All In, which always tends to happen at All In. And we do not have the contestants yet for the match, but we will know in the future. All In is set to take place at Globe Life Field, and it's going to be taking place on Saturday, July 12th. But yeah, that was episode 9 of the WrestleHavoc Podcast. We definitely talked about a lot of things right here on this edition of the show. Of course, we got Night of Champions this coming weekend. We got a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about next week, but a lot, and I mean a lot of topics. This week, man, we had the AEW story with Jon Moxley. We had, Night of Champions, whether or not WWE is going to go to Saudi Arabia. We talked about a lot of stuff, and I'm sweating bullets right now, man. It's literally 88 degrees outside, and there's literally no AC in here. But I still wanted to give you guys a show. But yeah, that was episode 9 of the WrestleHavoc Podcast from Sunday, June 22nd, 2025. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications, I mean, look out for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc channel in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, thank you guys so much if you guys are watching on the WNN Facebook page or YouTube channel or on the WNN app. I thank you guys so much for watching this edition of the WrestleHavoc Podcast. And as always, it is yours truly, Flamin' Ricky DeRays, signing out, and I'll see you guys all next week. Peace.